The wrench slipped from Danny Wright's oil-stained fingers and bounced across the metal floor. He cursed under his breath and crawled deeper into the mining ship's engine compartment. 3 hours into this repair job, and the damn coolant line still leaked like a broken promise. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past Haven's Rest, the orbital repair station that had been his prison and sanctuary for the last 4 years. Nobody chose to work this far out in the outer fringe. This was where careers came to die, where people ran from their pasts, where the galaxy's broken things limped in for one last chance at survival. Danny fit right in. He was tightening the last connector when the proximity alarm screamed through the station's comm system. Danny jerked up and smacked his head against a support beam. Pain flared behind his eyes as he dragged himself out of the engine compartment, rubbing his skull and leaving a streak of grease across his forehead. The control room was barely bigger than a closet. Screens flickered with diagnostic readouts from a dozen docked ships, but Danny's attention locked onto the main display. Something massive was approaching the station, something that made the sensors struggle to categorize what they were seeing. What the hell? Danny muttered, cycling through different scan frequencies. The object was giving off heat signatures, electromagnetic pulses, and quantum fluctuations that looked almost like a biological organism. But nothing biological could survive in open space. Nothing that size, anyway. He pulled up the visual feed and his breath caught. A dragon floated through the void toward his station. Not a ship shaped like a dragon. An actual creature, easily 200 meters from snout to tail, with wings that seemed to catch and fold starlight itself. Crystalline scales covered its body, glowing with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly. But something was terribly wrong. Massive gouges tore through its side, leaking streams of frozen material that glittered like diamonds in the harsh light of distant stars. Danny had heard stories about the Draken, the ancient spacefaring species that traveled between worlds using abilities nobody fully understood. He'd always figured they were myths, tall tales that spacers told in bars after too many drinks. Yet here one was, dying right in front of his station. The creature drifted closer, moving with obvious pain. It was trying to dock at one of the large berths usually reserved for cargo haulers. Danny rushed to open the docking clamps, his hands moving across controls he rarely used. The berth wasn't designed for living things. It was meant for ships, for machinery, for things that didn't bleed. The Draken settled into the dock with a groan that Danny felt through the station's hull. He grabbed his emergency medical scanner, though he had no idea if the thing would work on alien biology, and made his way to the docking bay. His heart hammered as the airlock cycled open. She was even more massive up close. Her scales, which had looked beautiful from a distance, were cracked and damaged. The wounds along her side leaked a strange crystalline substance that solidified as soon as it hit the cold air. One of her wings hung at an odd angle, torn and broken. Her eyes, enormous and golden with vertical pupils, tracked his movement as he approached. Danny stopped a few meters away, suddenly aware of how small he was compared to this ancient creature. "I'm Danny," he said, feeling foolish. "This is my station. You're hurt." The Draken's head moved slightly. When she spoke, her voice resonated inside Danny's mind rather than through his ears. It was like hearing someone speak underwater while remembering a song from childhood. "I am Silvara. I come here to die in peace. Do not interfere, small one." Danny frowned. "You came to a repair station to die? That's pretty stupid, don't you think?" The dragon's eyes widened slightly. Apparently, nobody talked to dying legends like they were being idiots. "I came because my navigation organs are failing. I can no longer sense the currents between stars. This was the nearest stable structure. I will rest here until my body returns to cosmic dust." "Yeah, that's not happening," Danny said. He moved closer, holding up his scanner. "I fix things. That's what I do. Ships, engines, life support systems. You're basically a biological ship, right? So let me look at what's broken." "You cannot repair what nature has claimed," Silvara said, but her voice held a note of curiosity rather than anger. Danny knelt beside one of the wounds. The crystalline blood fascinated him. It wasn't like any biological material he'd seen, but it reminded him of certain coolant systems, of materials that change state based on temperature and pressure. "Maybe not, but I can try." "What have you got to lose? You said you're dying anyway." Silvara was silent for a long moment. Danny could feel her studying him, weighing his words. Finally, she spoke again. "Why would you help me? My kind are nothing to humans. We do not trade. We do not share technology. We simply exist and fly between your worlds. Because you're hurt and you showed up at my door, Danny said simply. He looked up at her enormous golden eyes. Because I know what it's like to feel broken and alone. Because 4 years ago I lost my entire mining crew when our equipment failed, and I couldn't fix it fast enough to save them. Because I've been hiding out here ever since, fixing things that can't yell at me or die on me, and because maybe, just maybe, I'm tired of letting things die when I might be able to do something about it. The truth of his words hung in the cold air of the docking bay. Danny hadn't meant to say all that. He'd kept those feelings locked away for years, buried under work and solitude and the comfortable lie that he preferred being alone. Silvera lowered her massive head closer to Danny. He could feel heat radiating from her scales, could see his reflection in her golden eyes. You are a strange creature, Danny, right? Very well. Examine what you will, but know that I have lived 800 years and flown through nebulas that birthed stars. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I do not fear death. Good, Danny said, moving his scanner across her damaged scales. Because I'm scared enough for both of us. He had no idea if he could save her. He barely understood what he was looking at. But as his scanner collected data, and his mind began working through the problem, Danny felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, maybe even hope. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance. Inside the docking bay, a mechanic and a dragon began an unlikely partnership that would shake those very stars to their foundations. Neither of them knew it yet. 3 days of scanning had taught Danny 2 things. First, Draken biology was impossibly complex. Second, he was in way over his head. He sat cross-legged on the docking bay floor, surrounded by holographic displays showing internal scans of Silvera's body. The images rotated slowly, highlighting structures that made no sense according to any biology he'd learned. Her organs weren't just organic tissue. They were part crystal, part mineral, part something that his scanners couldn't even classify properly. Your navigation system is completely shot, Danny said, gesturing at a cluster of damaged structures near Silvera's brain. These organs here, they're supposed to sense gravitational fields and quantum fluctuations, right? Let you plot courses through FTL space? Correct, Silvera's voice echoed in his mind. She had remained remarkably patient during his examinations, though Danny suspected she still expected him to give up. They developed over millions of years of evolution. My species learned to feel the currents of space itself, to ride them between stars. But mine have been damaged by corrupted space. Corrupted space? Danny looked up from his displays. The Vesperan Dominion controls territory where they have weaponized spatial anomalies, Silvera explained. Her golden eyes dimmed slightly with pain or memory. I was carrying information about their activities. I flew too close to one of their testing sites. The unnatural distortions in space burned my navigation organs like acid burns flesh. Danny pulled up a detailed scan of the damaged tissue. The organs looked like someone had taken a blowtorch to delicate crystal formations. Cracks spiderwebbed through structures that should have been smooth and whole. Some sections had crumbled entirely, leaving gaps that leaked the strange crystalline fluid that served as her blood. This is bad, Danny admitted. I mean really bad. Your species doesn't do surgery, right? We cannot, Silvera said. Our bodies grow like both living tissue and mineral formations. Cutting into us is like cutting into stone while it is still alive. We heal slowly, if at all. Most injuries this severe are fatal. Danny stood and paced around the holographic displays. His mind raced through possibilities, discarding them one by one. Traditional medicine wouldn't work. Surgery would kill her. The organs couldn't be replaced because they were unique to each individual Draken. Every solution he could think of ran into the same wall. What if we don't replace them? Danny said suddenly. I do not understand. What if we build something that works with what's left? Danny's words came faster as the idea took shape. Look, when a ship's navigation computer fails, sometimes you can't replace it. Too expensive, wrong model, whatever. So you build a workaround. You create a secondary system that interfaces with the broken one, picks up the slack, handles the functions that the original system can't do anymore. Silvera's head lifted slightly. You propose to build a machine that connects to my organs? Not just connects. Integrates, Danny said, excitement bleeding into his voice. Your remaining tissue still works, just not well enough to navigate by itself. But what if we created mechanical sensors that could read gravitational currents and quantum fluctuations, then feed that data directly into your nervous system? Your brain would process it like it always has, but the mechanical parts would do the heavy sensing work. This has never been done, Silvara said slowly. The medical institutes of a dozen species have studied Draken biology. None have successfully created hybrid systems at such a fundamental level. Yeah, well, they were probably thinking like doctors, Danny said. He grinned, that reckless expression that used to drive his crew crazy. I'm thinking like a mechanic. He spent the next 2 days fabricating components. Haven's Rest had a decent machine shop, necessary for creating custom repair parts for the odd ships that limped through. Danny used every tool he had, building delicate sensors that could detect the subtle forces that Silvera's organs normally sensed. The tricky part was the interface. He needed to connect mechanical devices to living nervous tissue without killing the tissue or causing rejection. Danny adapted human neural interface technology, the kind used to control mining equipment through direct thought. He'd installed dozens of them in his old cruise gear. The memory made his hand shake. He stopped, closed his eyes, and forced himself to breathe. That was the past. This was now. He couldn't save his crew, but maybe he could save Silvara. Danny? Her voice was gentle in his mind. You carry great pain. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess I do. The accident you mentioned, your crew. Tell me what happened. Danny didn't want to talk about it. He never talked about it. But something about Silvara's patient presence, her ancient calm, made the words spill out. He told her about the mining operation, about the equipment failure he'd missed, about watching his friends die while he desperately tried to repair systems that were already too far gone. About the guilt that had driven him to this remote station, where he wouldn't have to watch anyone else die. You blame yourself for something you could not prevent, Silvera said. I was the mechanic. It was my job to prevent it. And I am a Draken. It is my nature to fly. Yet here I am, unable to navigate, my body failing, Silvara said. Should I blame myself for not being stronger? For not sensing the spatial corruption sooner? For 800 years I have carried the memories of friends who lived such brief lives compared to mine. Every connection I formed, I knew I would outlive. Is that pain less than yours simply because I expected it? Danny looked up at her, seeing the weight of centuries in those golden eyes. How do you deal with it? By choosing to continue, Silvara said simply. By accepting that loss is part of existence, but so is creation, connection, and hope. You are trying to save my life, Danny Wright. That is not the action of someone who has given up. Danny wiped his eyes roughly. Yeah, well, let's see if my crazy idea actually works before we get too philosophical. He returned to work with renewed focus. The components were ready. Now came the terrifying part. He needed to surgically attach the mechanical sensors to Silvara's damaged organs, threading neural interfaces through crystalline tissue without causing more damage. This is going to hurt, Danny warned. I have lived 800 years, Silvara said. I can endure pain. Danny picked up his tools. His hands were steady now, his purpose clear. Okay then. Let's teach your body to work with some machinery. As he made the first careful incision, Danny wondered if this was how all great innovations happened. Not through genius or planning, but through desperate people refusing to accept that something was impossible. Willing to try anyway because the alternative was unacceptable. If this worked, he would have created something entirely new. If it failed, at least he would have tried. Either way, he was done hiding from the galaxy. The Vesperan warship appeared on Danny's sensors like a predator sliding out of shadows. He'd been running final diagnostics on Silvara's new hybrid systems when the alarm chimed. One look at the ship's configuration told him everything he needed to know. Military, armed, and heading straight for Haven's Rest. Silvara, Danny said quietly. We've got company. The dragon's eyes opened. She'd been resting while her body adjusted to the mechanical components now integrated with her nervous system. Vesperans. They have found me. Yeah. Danny pulled up the communication channel. A face appeared on his screen. Reptilian features covered in dark scales. Cold yellow eyes studying him with casual disdain. This is Haven's Rest. You're in neutral space. State your business. I am Commander Vren of the Vesperan Dominion, the figure said. His voice was sharp, clipped. We are tracking a wounded Draken that stole classified information from our territory. Surrender the beast immediately. First, she's not a beast. Her name is Silvara, Danny said. Second, she didn't steal anything. She's a courier. It's literally what Draken do. Third, even if she had your precious data, she's under medical care. So no, Vren's eyes narrowed. You are one human on an unarmed repair station. We can take what we want. I am offering you the chance to survive this encounter. You have 1 hour to comply. The screen went dark. Danny stared at it for a moment, then started laughing. It wasn't a happy sound, Danny. Silvara's voice held concern. I'm about to do something really stupid, Danny said. He was already moving, pulling up the station's communication systems, activating protocols he'd hoped never to use. You should tell me to just hand you over. It would be the smart thing. Is that what you wish to do? Hell no, Danny said. You're not cargo. You're not a thing they can just take. And I'm really tired of bullies thinking they can do whatever they want because they've got bigger guns. He activated the station's emergency broadcasts, flooding every frequency with warnings about a reactor meltdown, about radiation leaks, about catastrophic failures that were complete lies. Then he opened a wideband transmission to every ship within 3 light years. This is Haven's Rest Repair Station. The Vesperan Dominion is threatening to attack a civilian facility to capture a wounded Draken, who is under medical care. They plan to murder a dying patient and probably kill me too. If anyone out there gives a damn about that, now would be a great time to show up. Silvara lifted her head. Danny, you cannot fight them. I am old. I have lived a full life. Do not sacrifice yourself for me. Not planning to sacrifice myself, Danny said, though his hands were shaking as he powered up what few defensive systems the station had. They were meant to deflect debris, not military weapons. I'm planning to be really annoying until help arrives. Or until they blow us up. Could go either way, honestly. Why? Silvara asked. The question resonated through his mind with genuine confusion. Why would you risk everything for a creature you met only days ago? Danny stopped his frantic work and looked at her. Really looked at her. Because you matter. Because every person, every being that thinks and feels and dreams, they matter. My species figured that out the hard way. Through a lot of stupid wars and mistakes. We're not always good at remembering it, but when we do, we can be pretty stubborn about it. He turned back to his controls. Besides, I told you about my crew. About how I couldn't save them. Well, I can't do anything about the past, but I can do something right now. Even if it's stupid. Even if it doesn't work. At least I'll know I tried. The hour passed with agonizing slowness. Danny watched his sensors, hoping against hope that someone would respond to his message. The Vesperan ship held position. Weapons powered but not yet firing. Vren was probably enjoying the wait, letting the fear build. Then, 17 minutes before the deadline, new contacts started appearing on the sensors. First 1 ship, then 3, then a dozen. They weren't military vessels. They were freighters, mining ships, independent traders, small ships barely armed, but they came. And they positioned themselves around Haven's Rest in a loose formation that said clearly, "You'll have to go through us." Danny's communication panel lit up with incoming messages. Captains he'd repaired ships for over the years. Pilots who owed him favors. A few who'd simply heard his broadcast and decided that attacking wounded Draken was a line they wouldn't let anyone cross. More ships arrived. Some came because they revered the Draken. Some came because they hated the Vesperan Dominion's aggressive expansion. Some probably came just because they were bored, and this sounded more interesting than hauling cargo. Commander Vren appeared on the screen again. His expression had shifted from confident disdain to barely controlled anger. You dare threaten the Dominion with this rabble? Not threatening anyone, Danny said. He was grinning now, wide and reckless. These are just concerned citizens of the galaxy, exercising their right to be in neutral space. You're welcome to try going through them to get to us, but I should mention, most of those ships have recording equipment, and I'm betting a lot of people would be interested to see the Vesperan Dominion murder a wounded Draken and a bunch of civilian ships. Vren's scales seemed to darken with rage. The Dominion has a long memory, human. Yeah? Well, humanity has a short temper and a bad habit of fighting battles we can't win, Danny said. So I guess we're even. Now get away from my station before I do something else stupid. The Vesperan ship held position for another 10 minutes. Danny could almost feel Vren weighing his options, calculating whether the political fallout was worth one dying Draken. Finally, the warship's engines flared and it began to retreat. The communication panel exploded with cheers and messages from the assembled ships. Danny slumped in his chair, shaking with adrenaline and relief. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Silvara's presence filled his mind, warm with an emotion he couldn't quite name. No one has ever fought for me like that. In 800 years, no one has stood between me and death simply because they believed I mattered. Well, Danny said, his voice rough with emotion. You do matter, and I'm pretty good at being stubborn about things that matter. I believe, Silvara said slowly, that I would like to continue living. Your hybrid system has given me a chance at life I thought was lost. I do not wish to waste that gift, Danny smiled. Good. Because I've got a lot more calibrations to run on those systems, and it would be really inconvenient if you died before I finished. Silvara's laugh echoed through his mind like crystal chimes. Outside, the ships that had come to their defense began to depart, returning to their own journeys. But their presence had changed something fundamental. One human and one dragon had stood together against a galactic power and won, not through strength or weapons, but through the simple refusal to let cruelty go unchallenged. It was a small victory in a vast galaxy. But small victories, Danny had learned, were how you built something bigger. He returned to his calibrations, Silvara resting peacefully nearby. Neither of them knew that their stand had been recorded and broadcast across dozens of systems. Neither knew that their story was already spreading, changing minds and hearts across the stars. They only knew that they had found something rare in the cold vastness of space: connection, purpose, and the stubborn belief that one life was worth fighting for. Silvara's body hummed with energy that felt both familiar and strange. The mechanical components Danny had installed worked with her remaining organs, creating a symphony of biological and artificial signals that let her sense the gravitational currents once more. It wasn't perfect. The resolution was lower, the sensations less precise than before. But she could navigate again. She could fly. Danny watched his displays with satisfaction as the final calibration completed. Okay, all systems are showing green. How does it feel? Like learning to see again after going blind, Silvara said. She flexed her wings carefully, testing the repairs Danny had made to her torn membrane. Different from before, but functional. You have achieved something remarkable, Danny, right? Yeah, well, don't spread it around too much. I don't need every wounded alien in the galaxy showing up at my door. But Danny was smiling. For the first time in years, he felt like a mechanic again instead of just a hermit with tools. A priority message alert interrupted their moment. Danny frowned and opened the communication. The face that appeared belonged to an older woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She wore the patch of an independent freighter. You're the mechanic at Haven's Rest? She asked without preamble. That's me. Danny, right? You need repairs? No, I need to give you something, she said. I was part of that fleet that came when you called. I owe a debt to the Draken from years back. When I heard what the Vesperans were trying to do, I did some digging into their operations. She paused. What I found you need to see. Sending encrypted data now. The file transferred quickly. Danny opened it, then felt his blood run cold. Detailed reports, surveillance footage, internal communications. The Vesperan Dominion wasn't just trying to capture Silvara. They were hunting Draken systematically. 17 had gone missing in the past decade, all near Vesperan space. And the reason was worse than anything Danny had imagined. Silvara, he said quietly. You need to see this. She lowered her head to view his screen. As the information played out, Danny felt her presence in his mind become sharp and cold. The Vesperans were harvesting navigation organs from captured Draken. They were building biological FTL drives, forcing living Draken tissue into their warships. The spatial weapons they developed weren't just weapons. They were torture devices that used conscious Draken biology as living components. They are keeping my kin alive. Silvara's voice was ice. Trapped in machines. Unable to die. Unable to fly. Used as tools for war. Danny's hands clenched into fists. He thought about the hybrid system he'd created to save Silvara's life. The same basic principle, using mechanical and biological components together. But where he had worked to preserve life and dignity, the Vesperans had perverted the concept into something monstrous. We have to stop this, Danny said. How? Silvara's anger filled the docking bay like a physical force. I am one Draken. You are one human. The Dominion is a galactic power with fleets and weapons beyond counting. We expose them, Danny said. He was already thinking, his mind racing through possibilities. That freighter captain, she found this information. Which means it exists somewhere it can be accessed. If we can get proof, real undeniable proof of what they're doing, and broadcast it across the galaxy, the political backlash would be enormous. The Draken are revered, Silvara said slowly, understanding dawning. Not powerful, but respected. If the galaxy learns what the Dominion is doing to us, trade embargoes, military threats, protests, the Dominion would lose allies, trade partners, legitimacy, Danny continued. They're powerful, but they're not invincible. They need other systems to trade with to maintain their economy. If everyone turns against them at once, we would need evidence that cannot be disputed, Silvara said. Internal facilities. Living Draken that can testify to their treatment. Documentation from the Dominion's own systems, which means we'd have to break into one of their facilities, Danny said. Get inside, document everything, and get out alive. They stared at each other for a long moment. The enormity of what they were considering settled over them like a weight. Break into a military facility belonging to one of the galaxy's major powers. Document war crimes. Escape with evidence that would shake interstellar politics to its foundations. This is insane, Danny said finally. Completely, Silvara agreed. We'd probably die. Almost certainly. But if we don't try, your people keep getting tortured and killed. Yes. Danny stood up and started pacing. We'd need help, a team. Someone who knows Vesperan facility layouts. A way to get inside without being detected. A journalist or someone who can broadcast the evidence to every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. And a really fast ship for the getaway. I know other Draken, Silver said. I can contact them. Share what we have learned. Some may be willing to help, or may know those who would. Over the next 3 days, they built a plan. Silvara reached out through networks Danny hadn't known existed, contacting other Drakens scattered across the stars. Most were terrified when they learned what was happening. Some wanted to flee to the deepest parts of space, but a few, especially the younger ones, were angry enough to want action. One of those contacts led them to a Vesperan defector named Kelly's, a former military engineer who'd fled the Dominion after refusing to work on the biological weapon program. He knew facility layouts, security protocols, access codes. Another contact, a human journalist named Rita who'd been investigating Dominion activities for years, jumped at the chance to break the story. She had credentials, recording equipment, and most importantly, access to broadcast networks that could spread information faster than the Dominion could suppress it. A ship captain named Rook, who flew a modified scout vessel that was fast enough to outrun most patrol ships, agreed to provide transport. He'd lost family to Vesperan expansion and wanted revenge. Danny looked at the assembled group on his communication screen. A defector, a journalist, a pilot, a dragon, and a mechanic. It was a ridiculous team for an impossible mission. Okay, Danny said. Let's talk about how we're going to break into a Vesperan bioweapons facility and expose a galactic atrocity without getting killed. Kelly's pulled up schematics of the target facility. This is going to be extremely dangerous. Yeah, Danny said. But someone's got to do it. Might as well be us. Silvara's presence in his mind was warm with determination. I have flown between stars for 800 years. I thought my last flight would be to a quiet place to die. Instead, I find myself planning an impossible rescue with a mechanic who refuses to accept what cannot be done. I believe I prefer this ending, Danny grinned. Who said anything about endings? We're just getting started. Rook's ship slipped through the outer perimeter of the Vesperan facility like a knife through silk. The vessel was small, painted with stealth coatings that scattered sensor sweeps into meaningless noise. Danny crouched in the cramped cargo bay with Rita and Kellis, checking equipment one last time while his heart tried to hammer its way out of his chest. 2 minutes to drop point. Rook's voice crackled through their comm units. After that, you're on your own. I'll hold position in the asteroid field. You've got 4 hours before the patrol shift changes. Miss that window and I can't extract you. Understood, Danny said. He looked at Rita, who was adjusting her recording equipment with steady hands. She'd done dangerous work before, infiltrated corrupt corporations and criminal organizations. But this was different. This was military. This was war. Kelly stared at the facility schematics on his datapad. The Vesperan scales were pale with stress. Once we're inside, follow my lead exactly. One wrong turn and we'll walk into automated defenses or guard patrols. Silvara's presence touched Danny's mind from where she waited in orbit. Her hybrid systems created sensor distortions that would look like equipment malfunctions, masking their approach. I will know if you are in danger. Be careful, Danny, right? Always am, Danny lied. The ship docked at a maintenance port using Kellis's stolen codes. The airlock cycled open and they moved quickly into the facility. Danny had expected something clinical, sterile. Instead, the corridors were industrial, all exposed pipes and harsh lighting. The air smelled wrong, like ozone and something organic that had been burned. Kellis led them through a series of service tunnels. They passed automated systems and storage areas. Danny kept waiting for alarms, for guards, for something to go wrong. But Kellis knew the facility inside and out. They reached a junction where the former engineer stopped and pointed to a sealed doorway. Beyond that door is the main laboratory. That's where they keep the captive Draken, Kellis whispered. I can get us in, but there will be staff. Scientists, guards. We'll need to move fast. Rita activated her recording equipment. Once we're inside, I document everything. Every detail, every face, every piece of evidence. No matter what we see, we can't stop to help anyone until we have enough proof to bury these people. Danny hated that she was right. They couldn't risk the mission by getting caught too early. But the thought of seeing suffering and walking past it made him sick. Kellis used his codes. The door hissed open and they slipped inside. Danny's first impression was sound. Low moaning, like wind through broken structures, except it was alive and filled with pain. Then he saw the source and his blood turned to ice. The laboratory was vast, filled with cylindrical containment units. Inside each one floated a Draken, or what was left of one. Their bodies had been surgically altered, organs exposed and connected to machines. Tubes ran into their crystalline flesh, draining their biological material while keeping them alive. Their eyes were open, aware, trapped in a nightmare they couldn't escape. Rita was already recording, her face pale but determined. She captured every angle, every horrific detail. Kellis moved to a computer terminal and started downloading files, pulling every piece of documentation he could access. Danny walked between the containment units, forcing himself to look at each Draken. 17 of them. 17 ancient beings reduced to living components in a weapons program. One of them, smaller than the others, turned its eyes toward him. Even through the pain, Danny felt recognition. This creature knew what they were trying to do. I'm sorry, Danny whispered. I'm so sorry. We're going to stop this. I promise. Danny, we need to move, Rita said. She'd gotten what they needed. Kellis had the files. Now they needed to get out before someone noticed the breach. That's when the alarm started. Red lights flashed throughout the laboratory. Automated security systems began sealing doors. Somewhere in the facility, guards were responding to the intrusion. Someone detected the download, Kelly said, panic creeping into his voice. They know we're here. Danny's mind raced. They'd gotten the evidence, but it wouldn't matter if they died before broadcasting it. The closest exit was back the way they'd come, but guards would be flooding those corridors. They were trapped. Then he looked at the containment units, at the Draken suffering inside them. An insane idea formed. Rita, send everything you've recorded to Silvara right now, Danny said. Encrypted burst transmission. Do it. That will pinpoint our exact location, Rita protested. Just do it. Danny moved to the nearest control panel. Kellis, understanding what he intended, joined him. Together, they started overriding the safety protocols on the containment units. If we release them, they'll die, Kellis warned. They're too damaged to survive outside the life support systems. Maybe, Danny said. Or maybe they're strong enough to survive long enough to tear this place apart. Either way, they deserve to die free instead of being used like this. The first containment unit opened. The Draken inside spilled out, crystalline blood pooling on the floor. For a moment, Danny thought he'd been wrong, that he'd just killed them faster. Then the creature's eyes focused. It saw its prison, saw its captor's facility, and roared with a sound that shook the walls. One by one, the containment units opened. The Draken, broken and dying, found strength in rage. They smashed through equipment, tore apart machinery, attacked the guards who rushed into the laboratory. It was chaos and destruction and the furious dying act of beings who refused to go quietly. Rita grabbed Danny's arm. There's a cargo bay this way. If we can reach it, Rook might be able to get us out. They ran through corridors filled with alarms and smoke. Behind them, the sound of destruction grew louder. The freed Draken were taking the facility apart, and Danny felt no guilt about it. This place deserved to burn. They burst into the cargo bay just as Rook's ship swooped in through the external doors. The pilot was screaming at them to hurry. Guards appeared at the far end of the bay, weapons raised. Danny didn't remember climbing into the ship. He remembered the door sealing behind them. Remembered Rook's ship diving away from the facility at dangerous speeds. Remembered holding onto a support beam while acceleration crushed him into the floor. Then they were clear, racing toward the coordinates where Silvara waited. Rita was already broadcasting the evidence on every frequency she could access. The files were spreading across the galactic network faster than the Dominion could stop them. Danny pulled himself to a viewport and looked back. The facility was venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches. The freed Draken had done as much damage as they could before their bodies gave out. It was a small victory, a tiny act of defiance, but it would shake the galaxy to its foundations. The galaxy erupted. Within hours of Rita's broadcast, the evidence spread to every corner of civilized space. Images of the tortured Draken, internal Vesperan documents proving the weapons program, testimony from Kellis about what he'd witnessed. The response was immediate and furious. Trade ships refused to dock at Vesperan ports. Diplomatic channels flooded with protests. Systems that had maintained neutral relationships with the Dominion suddenly imposed sanctions. 3 member worlds within Vesperan territory declared independence. The Dominion's leadership scrambled to contain the damage, but the truth was out and spreading faster than they could suppress it. Danny barely noticed any of it. He was too busy trying to keep Silvara alive. The escape from the facility had cost her. Using her hybrid systems to create sensor distortions for hours had pushed the delicate integration between mechanical and biological components to its limits. Something had broken, shorted out, damaged beyond quick repair. She'd collapsed as soon as they reached Haven's Rest, her body shutting down to conserve energy. "Stay with me," Danny pleaded, his hands working frantically over the exposed machinery in her side. Connections had melted, organic tissue had torn. It was worse than when he'd first found her. "Come on, Silvara. We didn't come this far for you to quit now." Rook and Rita helped as best they could, following Danny's instructions to hold tools and monitor readouts. But Danny knew the truth. He couldn't fix this. Not with the resources he had. Not fast enough to save her. His comm unit lit up with an incoming transmission. Multiple signals, actually. Ships were arriving at the station from all directions. Not warships or threats, but vessels carrying equipment, medical supplies, engineers, and xenobiologists from a dozen different species. "We heard what you did," one captain said over an open channel. "We're here to help." More ships arrived. A Trellan medical frigate with bioregeneration equipment, a human transport carrying neural interface specialists, a Hylian science vessel with crystalline growth accelerators. They'd dropped everything to come, bringing their expertise and technology to save the Draken who'd helped expose the Dominion's crimes. Danny coordinated the effort, directing specialists to different systems. They worked around his original hybrid design, supplementing it with technologies he'd never dreamed of having access to. A Trellan doctor showed him how to use bioregeneration fields to encourage Silvara's damaged tissues to heal faster. A human engineer helped him rebuild the mechanical components with better materials, more efficient designs. It took 3 days. 3 days of constant work, of specialists from different worlds learning to cooperate, of combining technologies that had never been meant to work together. Danny barely slept, sustained by coffee and stubborn refusal to accept failure. On the 3rd day, Silvara's eyes opened. "Danny." Her voice echoed in his mind, weak but clear. "I heard you calling to me. Even in the darkness, I heard you refusing to let me go." Danny's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the floor next to her, exhausted and relieved beyond words. "Yeah, well, you don't get to die after all this. I won't allow it." "You are a strange human," Silvara said. Her golden eyes held warmth that Danny had never seen before. "You saved my life twice now. You exposed a great evil. You brought together beings from across the galaxy to help someone they had never met, all because you believe that individual lives matter." "They do matter," Danny said simply. Around them, the various specialists were packing up their equipment. Many were staying to study the hybrid systems, fascinated by what Danny had created. His desperate attempt to save one life had opened new fields of research, new possibilities for integrating organic and mechanical systems. Medical applications, prosthetics, even new approaches to ship design. The implications would ripple through galactic science for decades. Rita found Danny in the docking bay later that evening. The journalist looked tired but satisfied. "The Dominion leadership is in chaos. They've shut down the bioweapons program officially. The surviving Draken from other facilities are being freed and treated." War crime tribunals are being organized. It's not over, but it's a start. What about Commander Vren? Danny asked. Arrested by his own people. They're trying to distance themselves from the program. Claim it was a few rogue officers. Nobody's buying it, but at least there will be some accountability. Rita said. She smiled. You did good, mechanic. You and that dragon of yours changed the galaxy. Danny didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a guy who'd gotten lucky, who'd stumbled through a series of increasingly insane situations and somehow survived. But he supposed that was how most important things happened. Not through grand plans, but through ordinary people who refused to accept cruelty when they saw it. Weeks passed. The initial crisis faded into ongoing political negotiations and reforms. Silvara recovered fully, her new hybrid systems working better than Danny's original design thanks to the improvements made by the specialists. She was stronger now, capable of navigating with precision that exceeded even her original abilities. They could have stayed at Haven's Rest. The station had become famous, a destination for beings seeking the mechanic who'd saved a dragon. But Danny found he didn't want to hide anymore, and Silvara had spent enough time in one place. There are others who need help, Silvara said one morning. Other beings whose bodies do not match their spirit's desires. Other places where technology and biology might work together in new ways. You want to go help them, Danny said. I want us to go help them, Silvara corrected. You taught me that evolution is not just biological. It is choosing to change, to grow, to become something new without losing what you are. I think the galaxy needs more of that philosophy. Danny looked around his workshop one last time. He'd come here to hide from life, to avoid the pain of losing people he cared about. Instead, he'd found purpose, friendship, and the courage to face the galaxy again. Okay, he said. Let's go shake up some more assumptions. Silvara laughed. That sounded like crystal chimes that Danny had come to love. Together they launched from Haven's Rest, a dragon and a mechanic flying toward the stars. Behind them, they left a galaxy forever changed by the simple truth that one life mattered. That kindness was strength, and that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't weapons or wealth or power. It was the stubborn refusal to let suffering go unchallenged, even when victory seemed impossible. They flew between the stars, seeking others who needed help, teaching the lesson they'd learned, that the strongest bonds were built not on similarity, but on choosing to understand what was different. That cooperation created possibilities that neither organic nor mechanical life could achieve alone. The galaxy had been shaken, and as Danny and Silvara traveled from world to world bringing innovation and hope, those tremors continued to spread. New alliances formed. Old prejudices crumbled. Beings who'd thought themselves limited by biology or machinery discovered new possibilities. Years later, when people asked Danny about the day he'd stood between a dying dragon and those who would have killed her, he always gave the same answer. He'd simply done what anyone should do when faced with injustice. He'd refused to look away, and that refusal had changed everything.